Hi everyone, welcome back. I wanted to discuss with you what it is that you're looking for in a garden. Over the years, the garden has developed and has taken on a different life form over the last 30 years or more. I've changed it to suit what I want particularly, and that's the most important thing, is what do you want from a garden? And I decided that instead of having a garden with beds so that you could have, say, one bed to the left hand side of the garden which was all one particular shades of colours, pinks, reds, whites, things that complement each other, or you could just have a white border, but normally to do that sort of thing you would need a reasonably large sized garden, although it will work with a small garden. My garden's not large and it's not particularly small, it's somewhere between medium to small medium, and I decided that when I grew and set out the garden, I didn't design it completely at all. I basically worked out what sort of grass area I wanted, how much border I wanted. That was dependent on how much maintenance I wanted to do in the garden, because obviously the more beds you have, the more maintenance. And over the years I've decided that I like the beds, and I've got the time now that I'm almost retired to do the things that I want to do in the garden. So there are quite a number of beds, but if it's something you enjoy and you're able to do, then that's the important thing. I wanted a garden that didn't specialise. A lot of the show gardens that you go to usually are known for one thing in particular. Some gardens concentrate on azaleas and rhododendrons, and so in the spring to early summer there's this magnificent display. Wisley do this with their Battleston Hill, and it's almost a garden inside a garden, so you can go up there and it's huge and you can see all the rhodos and things in flower. If your garden's not that big, people concentrate on other things, but I wanted a garden that was going to give me colour for most of the year, and the longer the season the better. So I have designed my garden and put plants in over the years to complement that. In the garden at the moment you'll see that there's a fair number of chrysanthemums. There's one there that's coming into flower out of season, that shouldn't flower till the autumn, but I took cuttings, and so I'm getting a sort of a double dose there, because once that's finished flowering, just those few flowers, I'll cut them back and then they should flower again in the autumn. Lots of colours here. The idea of putting chrysanthemums in is that will extend your season well into October, end of October, even into, if it's mild enough, even into December. I've had chrysanthemums out in flower. Another chrysanth there, just coming out. So there's one particular branch there that's flowering and the other isn't, which is quite interesting. So as soon as that's finished flowering, I'll cut that back and allow the other to grow, and then that will sprout where I've cut it back. My garden, I've designed it so that it peaks twice during the season. At the moment the roses are giving it that extra oomph in the garden, and the scent is just absolutely amazing. So at the moment some of the other things, some of the herbaceous are coming out in flower. The summer bedding's just starting to take over. Again, I use coloured foliage to accentuate the garden, to give you more depth and more contrast. It makes it look really spectacular, and that's why I choose foliage as well, architectural foliage and things. It's just personal preference, but at the moment we've got half of the herbaceous, or probably a third of the herbaceous, are coming out. The rest will come out all through the summer in different stages. And this is basically what I'm looking for, so that there's interest in the garden right the way throughout the summer into the autumn. And then to add it an even bigger dimension, I've planted this liquid amber, which will give red to orangey red and even some yellowy coloured foliage in the autumn, which just sets the garden off completely. The colour contrast from the patio, when you see the cotinus with that dark rich foliage and then the variegated maple behind it, it just makes the garden come alive, and you can see all these things, and it just gives that extra added dimension, so that when you come into the garden, it doesn't matter what time of year it is, apart from the winter. There's not an awful lot goes on in the winter. Just a few plants in early January or so. You've got things like daphnes that have the scent and that, but if the weather's not nice, not many people will go out in the garden in the winter anyway. So if you're going to grow things like daphnes, put them near the front door or near the house if you've got a bed there, or even put it in a pot and put it in the front door. The reason I've grown this copper beech is to give this contrast between the beech and the variegated form of euonymus behind it. So that's just the way that you do things. Down the bottom of the garden we've got other things coming out. The different clematis all starting to show. I've only got early clematis at the moment, and something I want to try and do later in the year is maybe develop some clematis that'll be late season flowering. Again, using things like the Lombardy conifer that they grow in Italy all the time. It just gives more structure and depth to the garden and adds interest and variety. The roses, again, I've chosen half standards so that it gives us more height and depth. Growing so close to the hedge, next door's hedge, means that it might struggle a bit to compete, but I've tried feeding it and keeping it nice. You choose what you like best. I've also got things like Alstroemeria in the background there that's coming up. Those we use for cut flowers, and we've already picked several already. The dahlias are coming out, the clematis again looking rather nice. Choose what you want in the garden. Coloured foliage, hostas are always striking and amazing, with the heuchera next to them giving the copper colour, which just brings the garden to life, gives it more depth and something of interest to look at. The roses at the back garden, at the back, are all coming out in flower, different varieties of climbers, and these are all looking rather nice at the moment. So when you're planning your garden, decide what you want to do, whether you want a garden that's going to have huge interest at certain times of the year, and you can always extend these sort of things by putting in summer bedding, which is what I do to give that extra colour. Things like cosmos, which I've planted here, and in about another 3 to 4 weeks that'll start flowering and it'll start to look really good. I've got several lilies growing in the garden that are going to give really a good show and another splash. As I was saying, there's 2 peaks in my garden. Most of this herbaceous will be out and in full flower come July, August, September, and that's when we should get a second peak from all the roses, as long as I manage to prune them back as soon as they finish flowering, so that we get the structure for new flowers come August, September, and that will give us that second flush and flourish of growth. It'll be quite something. I do enjoy gardening, and that's the thing, and in this time of lockdown I think you're all beginning to realise how important gardens have been if you've got them, or allotments, and more people are turning to gardens. There's something wonderful about it. It just calms the soul, and getting near nature, and in my case it means that I'm nearer to God, because I believe he's the creator and he made all these things, and so it's for me it's got an added dimension. I've always wanted to be a gardener ever since I left school. Couldn't see myself in a factory, and so I've been very fortunate and very blessed to have a garden and to be a gardener. And it's also meant that although I'm almost retired, I've been able to work during the lockdown, because it's just the best place to be, out in the garden. Very few people that I see, and it's very easy to keep your 2 meters plus distance. So when you're thinking about your garden, think about what you want, think about how you can extend it well into the autumn. It's quite interesting. When I was growing up, we used to go to St Ives in Cornwall for a holiday, and I used to say to them, it's so beautiful there, the sea's so clear and the coastline, and the artists always go there because of the amazing light and stuff, and I just love Cornwall. It's such a beautiful county, and I asked a lot of the people there, I said, well, where do you go for your holidays, living in such a wonderful place? I said, do you go to go abroad or whatever? I said, but at that time of the year you obviously haven't got it being so hot. And I was staggered to find out that the majority, or quite a number of the people in Cornwall and St Ives, especially the shop people who closed down around about the end of October, beginning of October, they closed down a lot of their shops, and they told me they went to Blackpool. I couldn't believe it. I said, Blackpool? I said, why on earth did you go to Blackpool? And they said, well, because the season is so much longer with the illuminations and everything. They could enjoy all the things there. So it's incredible to extend your season so that you get as much joy out of it as possible. And these Lewisia have been superb. They've been in flower now for weeks and weeks, and I just love them. I've decided to see if I can grow some Lewisia, some Cleanthus from seed. So I've left a couple. I've taken most of them off, but I've left a couple of seed pods on the plant, and I'm going to see if they'll develop seeds so that I can try growing them from seeds next year. Hopefully the plant will survive the winter again outdoors, and everything will be really good. So think about your garden. You can develop it. You don't have to do it all in one go. You don't have to just sort of think you need a blank canvas. Just develop it slowly. Take out the things that you don't particularly like. Take out the things that you think just don't flower long enough. They're very short-lived, and therefore you need the space would be better with something else in that's going to flower for longer or look better for longer. Give it some thought, and over the years you can change it and get it into something that you really love. So that's just an idea of what to do in the future. Take care, everyone. Bye.